I think it's time I started living for myself, he said, raising his glass halfway before letting the words settle like dust over the celebratory table. Everyone froze. Forks hovered midair. Glasses remained untapped. I watched as 30 pairs of eyes shifted from him to me, waiting for the eruption. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. Then cheers to your honesty, I said calmly and reached into my purse. My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 53. Until that moment, I had spent nearly 3 decades perfecting the role of the reliable wife and tireless mother. I built a life around my husband, Martin, and our daughter, Chloe, the brilliant young woman whose university graduation we were meant to be celebrating that day. Martin's new muse, a woman named Sydney Cross, sat a few tables away, wearing a cocktail dress she probably bought with money siphoned from our joint accounts. The same Sydney who had once asked me for career advice over coffee. The same Sydney who had smiled through my dinner parties while secretly dismantling my marriage. I laid a sealed white envelope next to Martin's plate. "What's this?" he asked, his smirk faltering. "Something for later," I said. Then I kissed Chloe's temple. "I'm so proud of you. This day is still about you." I stood up, nodded politely to our guests, and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Behind me, the door burst open. "Evelyn, what the hell is this?" Martin's voice cracked with disbelief. I didn't turn around. The envelope contained the beginning of the end, just not the one he expected. The August heat slapped me in the face as I stepped into the parking lot. But I welcomed it. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The envelope I handed Martin was more than symbolic. It contained court-stamped divorce filings, a petition I had quietly prepared weeks ago. It also included printed records, his financial betrayals laid bare in color-coded statements, transfers to an account in his name only, wire payments to jewelry boutiques in Atlanta, hotel stays in Charleston, always for two, and the gem, a notarized copy of our prenuptial agreement, highlighting the adultery clause he'd obviously forgotten about. While Martin had been planning his reinvention, I'd been documenting his downfall. I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I drove to a nearby park and sat beneath the old oak tree where Chloe had once learned to ride a bike. I closed my eyes and counted backward from 100. Not because I was angry. I wasn't. I was resolved. There's a difference. By the time I returned to our house in East Haven, the house Martin had promised Sydney in one of the texts I found, it was nearly dusk. I parked beside his Tesla, the car he claimed we could barely afford, while quietly putting $30,000 into a consulting fund I now knew was for Sydney's planned startup. I entered using my key, the one I'd soon have changed, and climbed the stairs to the bedroom we'd shared for 27 years. His clothes were already packed. Luggage hidden behind the linen closet, zippers half pulled, tags still on. He was planning to leave the day after Chloe's celebration. Make a quiet exit. A clean break. No mess. But Martin had made one critical mistake. He underestimated me. The text messages were the final nail. He left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter weeks ago. Maybe he was careless. Maybe he wanted to be caught. Either way, I saw everything. After the graduation, he'd written, "I'll make the announcement. Public setting. She won't make a scene." No, I didn't. I made a plan. He came home swinging the front door open like he still lived here. "Evelyn." I was seated in the living room, calm, laptop on my knees, highlighting key phrases in the deposition draft. I closed the lid gently and looked up as Martin stormed in, face red and breath short, the envelope in his fist now crumpled. "You served me papers today? During Chloe's graduation lunch? You said you wanted a new life," I replied evenly. "I'm just helping you get there. You had no right." "I had every right." I didn't raise my voice. "Just as you had every right to sneak around with Sydney, transfer funds, lie to your daughter, and orchestrate a public ambush. We all make choices, Martin. These are yours." He scoffed. "The prenup's expired. Any decent lawyer will tell you that." I leaned back and crossed my legs. Section 9. 2. The Infidelity Clause. Effective for the duration of the marriage. You insisted on it, remember? When you were the one with more to lose. Irony's a hell of a thing. He blinked. That smug confidence he wore so easily had cracked. Then he tried a new approach. Evie, don't throw away everything we built. I'm not. I'm protecting what's mine. What Chloe's owed. What you tried to give to someone who sat at our dinner table smiling in my face. Martin's phone buzzed. He checked it, jaw tightening. Sydney, I assumed. I need to make some calls, he muttered. You should, I said. You'll want legal counsel. He froze in the hallway, hand on the railing. What about Chloe? There it was, the shield. He always pulled her out like a trump card when cornered. You weren't thinking about Chloe when you were making promises to another woman. You don't get to hide behind our daughter now. He stared at me for a long moment, the house he thought he'd control now foreign under his feet. I'll be staying at Lily's tonight, I added. You have until tomorrow evening to remove your belongings. After that, the locks change. And with that, I left him standing in the ruins of his carefully rehearsed betrayal. Lily's house was quiet, tucked into a cul-de-sac framed by old oaks and brick mailboxes. She opened the door with a bottle of Malbec already breathing on the counter behind her. I heard, she said simply, pulling me into a hug. Chloe called. She okay? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She's furious. Devastated. Confused. But mostly proud. You should have heard her. We sat in the sunroom surrounded by books and ceramic coffee mugs with feminist quotes she never actually drank from. Lily had never married. She called it a smart bet, and I was beginning to see her point. What did he do when you left? She asked, pouring the wine. Tried guilt first. Then denial. Then Chloe. Lily snorted. The holy trinity of cheating husbands. We clinked glasses. Outside, cicadas hummed a late summer rhythm. I always thought if this day ever came, I'd fall apart, I admitted. And? I didn't. Later that evening, Chloe showed up. Still in her graduation dress, makeup smudged, hair knotted from stress and sweat. Why didn't you tell me? She asked as she collapsed into my arms. Because you deserved a clean finish to school. A celebration that wasn't tainted. She sat between Lily and me, a blanket draped over her legs, gripping her wine glass like it was the only thing keeping her upright. He told me this morning he was proud of me, she said. And then hours later, he detonates our family like it's a business merger. I showed her the court approval text from my attorney, emergency asset freeze granted. Martin's personal account, the one he thought was untouchable, was now his only source of liquidity. He's going to tell people you ambushed him, Chloe warned. He already has. And what do we say? We don't, I replied. The truth will do its job. Let him panic. And he did. He showed up the next afternoon, uninvited and unraveling. But he didn't come alone. Sydney was with him. Lily opened the door and gave me a look that said, you're not going to like this. She stepped aside, and there they stood, Martin and Sydney, like two actors late to a scene that had already wrapped. Sydney looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, she was still tall, youthful, polished, but there was something in the eyes. A flicker of doubt maybe. Guilt, if she had a soul. Martin, by contrast, looked like a man trying to wear the skin of his old confidence. It didn't fit anymore. You need to unfreeze the accounts, he said without so much as a greeting. No, I replied flatly. We can settle this like adults, he insisted, glancing at Sydney like she might jump in to save him. Chloe entered from the hallway, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. Is this what adults do now? She asked. Blow up families and ask for financial courtesy after? Martin flinched. Chloe, sweetheart, this doesn't involve. Don't, she snapped. Don't call me sweetheart. You lied to my face this morning. Sydney shifted. I thought he was going to talk to your mother privately, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Martin gave her a sharp look. The cracks between them were beginning to show. I stayed quiet. I wanted to see what fell out. Lily stood behind me, arms folded. You're upsetting Chloe, she said firmly. You need to leave. I'm not going anywhere until Evelyn agrees to be reasonable, Martin snapped, stepping forward. Reasonable? I echoed. You mean like when you drained our savings, signed a lease on a condo with your mistress, and announced your abandonment of our family over Seabase and Chardonnay? His face reddened. Sydney's eyes snapped to him. You signed a lease? Martin ignored her. This is vindictive, Evelyn. This isn't you. You never knew me, I said. Just like you clearly didn't know your own lawyer, because he would have told you the prenup is still enforceable. Sydney turned to him, voice shrill. Prenup? He tried to wave her down, but she stepped back. You told me you were going to settle everything clean. There's no clean here, Chloe cut in. Only consequences. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lily, ever the conductor of chaos, broke the silence. Time's up, she said. This visit's over. Martin looked at me one last time. This isn't finished. It is, I said. You just haven't figured that out yet. He left without another word. Sydney hesitated, then followed, but not before muttering. He said it was all taken care of. I didn't respond. I just closed the door and poured another glass of wine. The door had barely shut before Chloe turned to me. He told her it was all taken care of? She didn't even know about the prenup. She didn't know a lot of things, I said. I doubt she even knew how much he was hiding. Or from whom. Sydney wasn't the threat she thought she was. She was just another tool in Martin's strategy, the next illusion in a long list of deceptions he'd carefully maintained. But illusions crack when exposed to reality. Over the next 48 hours, Martin's carefully built life unraveled. The court order ensured all marital accounts were frozen. Only his personal slush fund remained, the one he'd used for consulting expenses that just so happened to correspond with spa days and Tiffany receipts. But even that was running dry now that his condo application had been flagged for false income declarations. And Sydney? She wasn't sticking around like a partner building a new life. She was sending him increasingly passive-aggressive texts, some of which he forwarded to me by mistake. She was rethinking the timing, confused about expectations, and feeling misled. Welcome to my world, sweetheart. Meanwhile, Chloe was starting to see through more than just her father. She found an old notebook of mine, a list of postponed dreams, draft ideas for a financial consultancy I'd always meant to start after things settled. She read it cover to cover in one sitting. You should still do this, she said. You're better at this stuff than anyone I know. I'm tired, I told her. And I don't know if I want to build something again. You already are, she said. Just not for him this time. That night, Martin tried calling again. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a fresh spreadsheet and started a new list, this one titled Life After. By morning, I'd received an email from his attorney. Polite. Predictable. Begging for negotiation. I smiled. And replied with a PDF of the prenup, marked and annotated, highlighting every clause Martin thought I'd forgotten. I ended the email with one sentence. Let me know if you'd like to continue this conversation in court. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Martin didn't call. Didn't show up. His lawyer replied with a vague acknowledgement and a request for time to review matters thoroughly. I knew what that meant. They were scrambling. Martin had spent years cultivating the image of the harmless dreamer, the man with big ideas and no follow-through, charming enough to be forgiven when plans fell apart. But charm doesn't pay legal fees. And charm doesn't erase paper trails. I kept building my file. Every receipt, every transfer, every text, I documented it all. Lily helped scan and catalog it into a private drive my lawyer had access to. Chloe, meanwhile, was interviewing for postgrad fellowships and pretending not to worry, though I caught her more than once checking in on me through half-closed doors. This isn't your burden, I reminded her again. You keep saying that, she replied, but you never left me to carry mine alone. That's when I realized what this whole thing really was, not a betrayal of marriage. A betrayal of legacy. Martin hadn't just betrayed me, he'd undermined everything I'd spent decades building for her. And for that, I would not forgive him. On Friday, the realtor Martin had tried to work with, the one he had planned to sell our vacation home through, called my office. Apparently, there had been a misunderstanding about the ownership. No misunderstanding, I said. That property was inherited through my family trust. Martin's name was never on the title. He wouldn't admit it outright, but it was clear Martin had tried to leverage something that wasn't his to leverage. Later that day, my lawyer called with an update. Martin had submitted a proposed settlement. It was insulting. Minimal division of assets, no acknowledgement of the prenup's infidelity clause, and a vague suggestion that we keep things private for the sake of the family. I sent back 2 words, rejected. Proceed. Let him sweat. Let him realize what it feels like to be outmaneuvered by someone he thought would never fight back. And still, I felt calm. Not vindictive, just finished. I wasn't angry anymore. I was resolved. And resolve, unlike rage, is unstoppable. He tried one more time to play the role of the wounded man. Saturday afternoon. A knock on Lily's door. No Sydney this time, just Martin, looking tired, unshaven, and suddenly aware of how little leverage he had left. I just want to talk, he said, eyes darting past me into the house like he expected to find sympathy still living there. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. You've made your position clear, I said. The rest is in motion. He sighed, theatrically. You're really going through with this. You already did, I replied. He shifted on his feet. What do you want, Evelyn? Revenge. No, just accuracy. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I could see the calculation behind his eyes, trying to gauge if he still had any currency left with me. You're blowing this out of proportion. Sydney and it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I was going to tell you after graduation. Quietly. I let the silence answer for me. Then he tried the oldest trick in his playbook, emotional nostalgia. Do you remember when we couldn't afford a microwave and used to make popcorn on the stove? You said that was the happiest you'd ever been. I did remember. I also remembered that I was the one working double shifts while he chased a string of half-built ideas. What are you trying to say? I asked. That we had something real. That maybe we can still salvage some part of that. He wasn't asking to fix the marriage. He was asking me to soften. To protect him from what was coming. From the hearing. From Chloe's disgust. From Sydney's unraveling belief that she'd won. You taught me something, I said. You taught me that trusting the wrong person can cost you everything. But you also taught me that I can survive it. I turned to go. The next time we talk will be in court. Chloe won't forgive you for this, he said sharply. I paused. You're right. She won't. But not for what you think. Then I shut the door. Inside, Lily looked up from the kitchen. You good? She asked. I nodded. More than I've been in years. She raised her wine glass without standing. To clarity. I clinked it, and this time, the toast was mine. The morning of the hearing, I wore gray. No jewelry, no drama, just quiet precision. Martin arrived late. Alone. He avoided my eyes in the courthouse hallway, pacing like a man who'd just realized the ocean doesn't care if you can swim. His lawyer, an overconfident man with cufflinks shaped like dollar signs, glanced at me like I was a minor inconvenience. That changed after the first 10 minutes. The judge opened with our prenup, entered into record without objection. Then came the financial documentation. Every wire transfer. Every business lunch with Sydney. The shared condo application, the attempt to sell property in my family's name. The vacation house receipts. My lawyer presented it all methodically, unemotionally, like unfolding a map that leads to one conclusion: deliberate deception. Martin's attorney tried to object to the recordings. The judge waved him off. This is Georgia. One-party consent. She lived in the house. Proceed. Then came the final blow, Chloe's written statement. She hadn't told me she'd submitted one. It was short, but brutal. My father chose to humiliate my mother on the most important day of my life. He lied to both of us. I no longer believe he is acting in good faith, and I ask the court to consider this pattern when determining what is fair. Martin turned to me when it was read aloud. He didn't look angry. He looked hollow. Like someone who'd finally realized the price of his choices couldn't be negotiated down. By noon, it was done. The judge upheld the prenup. Assets divided per its terms. Adultery clause enforced. He'd lose the Savannah condo. Half of the retirement account. Immediate removal from any jointly held properties. The rest would be finalized within 30 days. Outside, the sun was blinding. Martin followed me down the courthouse steps. You got what you wanted? No, I said without turning. I got what I deserved. He stopped walking. I kept going. At the bottom of the steps, Chloe was waiting. Is it done? She asked. It started. We walked to the car without looking back. 3 weeks later, Martin moved out of the house on Linden Court. He didn't say goodbye. I didn't expect him to. The locks were changed the same afternoon. The day after the court finalized the agreement, a letter from the leasing office arrived. The condo he'd tried to sign with Sydney had been rented to someone else. Credit issues. Insufficient funds. His gamble had failed. Sydney, it turned out, had disappeared just as quietly. Rumor had it she'd taken a job in Dallas. No forwarding address. No goodbye. Maybe she realized Martin wasn't the windfall he'd promised. Or maybe she saw what he looked like when the mask fell. I didn't care either way. I reopened my consulting business plan the following Monday. Dusted off the notes. Updated the figures. Chloe helped me draft the first pitch deck. We worked late into the night, her on her laptop, me with a legal pad and pen, like I used to do when Martin said it was too risky to start something of my own. This time, I didn't ask for permission. I didn't tell people what happened unless they asked. Even then, I kept it simple. He made his choice. I made mine. Dignity, I'd learned, isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need validation. It just needs truth and time. The first client came from a referral. The second, from Chloe's university circle. By the end of the quarter, I had a wait list. One evening, while reviewing contracts in the kitchen, Chloe walked in with takeout and a grin. "You were always the strong one," she said out of nowhere. I looked up. "You always thought he was." "I think he wanted me to," she replied. "But I see it now." Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves rustled against the windows. The house felt still, but not empty. That night, I stood in the doorway of the room Martin had once called his study. I'd cleared it out, repainted the walls, planted a small succulent on the desk. It was mine now. Everything was.